Hi, I'm Diane, your host of Epic Conversations. Is there hope for a troubled marriage? Well, the answer is yes, according to our special guest, Joe DeMott. Joe is a Christian author, a writer, a teacher, and a speaker. And he is married to his lovely wife, Stephanie, for 48 years. And they have 4 children and 10 grandchildren. And they have been ministering to marriages for how many years? Quite a few, since 1986. And they have their own ministry called Missionaries to Marriages. And they've been in 30 countries sharing the good news of a restored marriage. They've written an awesome marriage course called 8 Keys to Breakthrough in Your Marriage. It is powerful. And they've written their own personal testimony of a restored marriage, a healed marriage, and it's called Redemption. We'll have this in the notes. And I've asked Joe today to talk about his personal story, how he went from abuse and adultery in his marriage to a restored, healed marriage and the head of his household as a godly man. So you're in for a real treat. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. No, Joe, thank you so much for
Thank you for having us.
being on the program. I just was honored. We finally got to connect. We met at the Billion Soul Harvest at Dice Up, and then you had a table explaining your marriage ministries, and then we come to find out we both went through the marriage ministries in Massachusetts and knew some of the same people.
We do. That's great.
Thanks, and we're glad you could be here.
Thank you. We're glad that we could be here too.
Oh, well, let's hear about your story. I'm sure you've told this before.
Well, you know, I'm used to telling my story actually with my wife by my side, so I'm going to try to give it maybe more my own personal perspective a little bit. But you know, I remember back when I was 17 years old and wanted to be a police officer, and I was getting involved in that and getting ready to be a police cadet right out of high school. So that was where I was at, you know, and thought I was pretty macho at the time. So I started dating my beautiful wife, Stephanie. And, you know, even then, things started going bad right off the bat. She was a Christian. She had been a Christian since she was 9 years old. And I was from a religious home. I mean, I went to church, you know, on Christmas and Easter.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, yeah, that's what we do. Yeah,
exactly. But I had no personal relationship with Jesus. I mean, I knew there was a Jesus, I knew there was a devil, but that was it. I didn't have that personal relationship at all. So I really had nowhere to ground myself. You know, I had a pretty good home. I mean, both my parents were together, and so it wasn't like I came from a broken home. But I didn't really still have that good example of a godly, loving, nurturing husband. And so when Stephanie and I started going together, even the abuse started then, because I found, looking back on it, that I had a real spirit of control, and I wanted to be in charge. And I'm not going to say that that's the way all cops are or anything like that, but, you know, it kind of went together, I guess, in a way, you know, and so I asserted that control on Stephanie even before we got married. So, and we even got separated for a few months while we were supposed to be getting married, but we didn't, and then we got married when she came back, and then it was like, okay, now what do we do? You know, again, she was a Christian, she, you know, believed in Christ, and she thought she could bring me to church and that I would come to the Lord, right? Well, I went to church, and I remember being up in the balcony, raising my hands, you know, praise the Lord, and had no idea what I was doing. It was all fake. It was all fake. I just did it to make her happy. But, you know, so as time went on, probably about, 7 years into the marriage, we had 3 children, our 2 boys and a girl. And I was on the police department. Worked the busiest car in the city here in Denver, Colorado, and saw a lot of stuff. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff affected me. You know, I'm not going to blame anything, but I'm sure it affected me. And I'm sure spiritually it affected me because the abuse and the control just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And, you know, the jealousy raged up in me because I had been involved in adultery, gotten involved, and something I never thought I would do, but I did. And because of that, I think it caused me to be even more jealous and suspicious of Stephanie. So I basically kind of pushed her away into that situation. So I kind of pushed her away from the Lord because of the abuse and everything. She just kind of gave up. And, you know, she was told by a lot of Christian ladies that, hey, get rid of this guy, he's a jerk, which I was. You know, God has somebody better for you. And God did have somebody better for her, but it was me being saved, healed, and delivered.
Amen.
You know, and they didn't stand. Now, she would have said, my husband is sick, he lost his job, blah, blah, blah. They would have got around her and they would have prayed for her. And, you know, that's the way they should have handled it with the divorce situation. But they didn't. They said, he's abusive. You know, and we understand that because a lot of times people are afraid. They're afraid to encourage somebody that's in abuse because they're afraid if something happens and it's like, that's my fault, you know. So we understand that, but we got to go back to what Jesus is all about, which is, I didn't get to yet. But anyway, so through that, you know, like I say, I pushed her away from God, and she got hard, and she basically wanted a divorce. And then she got involved with someone. And so now she's involved in adultery. I wasn't involved in adultery. And now she's telling me I want a divorce. And I'm like, why? I mean, I was so blinded by my own sin that I didn't even realize what I had done to her, you know, and how I had hurt her and destroyed her. And, you know, if I would have just nurtured, I look back now and think, gee, why didn't you just nurture this beautiful person that you knew, you know, because that's why you fell in love with her, because she loved Jesus, and you didn't realize that was why you loved her. So it's a story that I don't like to look back on, but as we went through that, and she, you know, got a lawyer, filed for divorce, and then I'm in a situation where I don't want to lose my kids and my marriage. I love my wife. And it's like, duh, now you know that you love your wife instead of all the times you were abusing her. And so I did what a lot of us do, is that's the point I looked to the Lord. I said, come on, God, if you're real, then be real. You know, show me you're real. Come into my heart, save my soul, and, you know, make me a Christian. I mean, I don't know the exact word. Sorry, it's been a long time. But, I mean, he did. He saved me. And I thought, man, I feel it. I knew that I was saved.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it. And I knew I was different. And immediately I go to Stephanie and I say, you know, come on, now we can make this work. I'm a Christian now and everything. Thinking that was going to be great, right? She's going to just hold me, put her arms around me and say, oh, I'm so glad you finally... No, didn't work out that way. She instead just said, I hate you. You don't understand. I don't love you. I don't want you. I don't care if you say you're a Christian. I'm done. I'm out of here.
She was hurt.
I mean, she was hurt very, very bad. And so I understood that then, but I still wanted the marriage. And I, you know, begged her and pleaded with her, and, you know, it just wasn't going anywhere. She was done. So then I thought, okay, God, now what do I do? Well, I just thank God I was a brand new Christian. And because if I would have listened to a lot of the people that were talking to me, I would have just went on and just said, you know, she's done with you, go find somebody else. But that's not what God was saying to me. Not people, God.
So you could hear his voice at this point.
It was like, I'll tell you in a second exactly what happened when hearing his voice. But I decided, no, I'm gonna believe for my marriage to be healed. And I started doing warfare, and I started learning about warfare, and I started learning about, you know, the fact that just because, you know, why should the devil rip me off? Why should the devil rip off my family? Why should the devil be able to take my wife? And yeah, I did all these different things, but I know that God can heal because I know how God touched me. And I knew her from before this happened, so I knew that God could work on her. I knew she wasn't just going to close her mind forever. So I just continued to pray. I wouldn't listen. I surrounded myself only with people that agreed with me. If they didn't agree with me about the marriage being healed, then I didn't surround myself with those people.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So because, why have people that are going to agree with the devil?
Yeah.
It's not going to help. So I just believed that she would come back. And so for 2.5 years, I basically believed for her to come back. And there was some times where we would kind of get back together and then, it would be split up again. And so that was, bad. But I remember one time where I actually ended up in the hospital because I felt it like I was having a heart attack. And what it was I realized later on, it was like my spirit just being ripped apart because this is a one flesh relationship.
Wow.
When we make that commitment, we make that covenant, it's a one flesh, we become one.
Yes.
And because of that, I realized that's what I was going through because obviously I didn't have a heart attack. I mean, I went to the hospital and they said, "No, get out of here." And she hated me so bad I had to take a cab to come home. She didn't even come visit me. But anyway, but she hated me. I mean, that's where she was at.
Yeah.
And so, again, we just went on for a few more months after that. A lot of things went on, and it seemed to be getting worse and worse and worse until finally she moved in with this other guy. I call him the alien because that's the nicest thing I could think of. But anyway, so she moved in with him, and I assumed they were going to get married eventually. Took our kids and moved in with them, and that was probably the worst heartbreak I had, even though I knew this was going on anyway, but that was kind of felt real final. And I thought, no, this can't happen. So I just continued to pray. And I remember I was watching Christian television, and I can even tell you it was, I forgot what his name was. Well, anyway, famous preacher. And they were having this service, and everybody was like throwing up all their addiction, like their dope and their cigarettes and everything up on the stage and, getting delivered. And I'm thinking, Jesus, you can do that for me. And I actually started calling out, "Stephanie, Stephanie, Stephanie, please come home, please come home." And you know what? I started feeling good for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then boom, I got hit really hard. And the devil said, "She's not coming home. You're going to lose your kids. You're going to be miserable. She's better off without you. Just take your life." And I remember as if it was yesterday, I laid down on my bed, had my service revolver. That was it. I was going to kill myself. And it sounds kind of flippant right now, but I thought, but I'm going to give her I'm going to do one last chance, type of thing. And so I picked up the phone. I started calling her. And there was no dial tone on the phone. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm thinking, what's up with this? So this is when they had bells on the phone. A lot of you probably won't remember this, but anyway, they had bells on the phone. So I saw, wow, it's turned off. So I turned that back on and got back on the phone, and all of a sudden I heard Stephanie's voice. And she said, "Hello?" And I said, "Hello, I've been trying to call you." She goes, "Well, I've been trying to call you. Why aren't you answering the phone?" I said, "Well, the bell was turned off." Wow. And she just says, "Well, I just want to ask you one thing." She said, after I went through, "Please come home, please come home." She said, "I just want to ask you one thing." She goes, "Were you calling my name?" She actually could hear me calling her name in the spirit. Wow. Saved my life. Because when I heard that, it was like, whoa, okay, I'm not giving up. Yeah. I'm sticking with this. And she says, "I still hate you. I'm not coming back," and all that. That's that's what happened. But I wasn't going to give up. And I just continued to pray. And eventually the Lord spoke to her. And, here we are today. Wow. And not only do, we have another child after this, who's a blessing, 13 32 years old, but I mean, a blessing now, but the fact that we have been able to sustain the healing. I think that's one of our biggest points of our testimony, is that we've been able to sustain the healing by continuing not only to be in the Word together and to pray for each other and to continue to pray, but to help others, you know, and to see other marriages be healed. And I remember that, you know, I was still on the police department. I became a homicide detective. But we worked I'd always call my wife to pray about cases and things. And I'd always say there's only one thing better than catching a killer, and that's saving a marriage. You know, so that became my motto for a while anyway. And so, you know, that's our testimony. And we have faith now to believe for other marriages. You know, sometimes people think we're a little wacko and we say, no, that marriage can be healed. But it's like we always say, did Jesus die on the cross for every sin except adultery, abandonment, and abuse, and whatever else it is? No, he came and he died for all sins. And if he died for those sins, it's not only the forgiveness, but it's the healing. By his stripes we are healed. So that's our story. I'm sticking to it.
That's your story. That's powerful, Joe.
Yeah.
That as a new believer, you knew enough that the devil was trying to steal your marriage.
That's right.
And you're like, he's not taking my marriage.
That's right. We need to know our enemy.
That's it. But that took a lot of courage and a lot of faith to stand for that 2.5 years.
Well, I was going to tell you that story about hearing his voice, because I remember at one point I was like, just not knowing for sure what to do. I laid down on my couch, had my Bible open, and I just was like laying there, and I mean, I heard, as close to an audible voice as I can say, that God told me, if you stay pure in your stand, I will heal your marriage. And at the time, she was, like I say, she was off going to marry someone else. But he showed me a picture of where she was at, what she was doing, and it's like, okay, God, I believe you. And I did. I stood. But see, staying pure is what's important, because a lot of people stand for their marriages in these situations, but they're not pure in that stand. They don't even believe the stand. It's like Tuesday night they go out, then this and that, or they'll date somebody, and then they'll say, but on Sunday morning I'm standing for my marriage. Well, that's not a stand. You know, you have to stand strong in covenant, and you have to believe every step of the way that your marriage is going to be healed.
So when you're saying stay pure, that means your eyes are focused on what God said and what you heard in the Word of God and what He spoke to you and He showed you. And you don't deviate from that. And you stand if it takes, no matter how long it takes. That is a key.
Right,
and
exactly.
That's where the battle is.
Right.
Because like you said, well, there's these other people telling you, well, you should, forget it now. I mean, she left, all the kids are gone, give it up. Can't you see it's not going to work? Right. But if we listen to those voices, the marriage would have never been healed.
Right.
But you made another wise choice besides standing for your marriage and knowing the devil was after it. You made another one, not listening to those people and not associating with them.
Right.
That's two big keys right there for success in getting healed in a marriage.
Right.
And you were a new believer.
Yeah.
Imagine
well, and I'm glad I was, because like I say, if I would have listened to... But it was interesting because the church we went to was the church that Stephanie grew up in. Oh. And so all of a sudden she'd get mad. She'd go, well, now you're going to my church. And I'd be like, well, I thought it was our church, but I'm going. And it was interesting because I got to go down to the altar and pray with one of her favorite TV preachers, Rex Humbard, which was amazing. I thought, I've heard his name before. Oh yeah, that's who Stephanie used to talk about. I'm going to go ask him to pray for her. So I said, Rex Humbard, my wife watched you since she was a little girl, and and I told him a little bit of the story, and I go, would you pray with me? And it was just amazing, some of the things that God would, a setup. I mean, He set it up. But not only the pureness, I appreciate what you said about staying focused, but it was also being pure in your heart about, other women, all these different things. It wasn't just the vision of the marriage being healed. It was the vision of really loving my wife. And I realized how much I loved her and how much I had screwed up. And I just wanted the marriage healed. I wanted her back because I loved her and I loved God. And, you could say, well, I love God, so I really wanted the marriage healed. But, God really brought this love to me for her that was crazy. But he did it because I asked him, And so many times we don't ask him, well, God can't make you love somebody. Well, that's what you think. God is love. Yes. The ones that I worry about are the ones that say, well, I'm in adultery because God, they don't say I'm in adultery, but I love this person now because God, put that there. No, God's not in adultery, brother.
That's right.
So no matter how you want to try to paint it up, that's not what happened. So I just appreciate the Lord, for doing what he's done. And because all the people that our ministry has touched now wouldn't have gotten touched. So.
Amen to that. And also the other thought that came to me is as you're ministering to other people in their marriages, you're sowing seeds into your own marriage, and it's keeping it even stronger.
That's right.
What a beautiful testimony. What a beautiful life that God has given you because you did commit to him. And he has been honored and faithful to you for that.
Amen.
So I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dan, and we appreciate being on.
Yeah, wow, that is awesome. This was a powerful testimony of a restored marriage. This is just a powerful testimony of somebody standing and saying, look at devil, you're not going to take my marriage. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of faith, and like Joe was saying, a lot of purity. So I want to encourage you to connect with Joe and Stephanie on their website. I have all the information for you in the notes. And it's just a wonderful testimony. So thank you. Please share this episode with a friend and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, have an epic conversation with Jesus. Hi, I'm Diane Grubus, and I've started a ministry, and I want to bless you. I'm so excited about it. DianeGrubus.com. Go to the website and check out all the wonderful things that we have in store for you. We have some great epic conversations with some powerful guests and some teachings, free downloads. And we would love to have you join us, love to have you partner with us. We appreciate you, and we want to hear from you. So check out the website, and thank you.